My name is Khit. I'm 29 years old with a beautiful wife and two amazing children. My journey began when I was just 16, a young teenager forced to mature quickly and figure out life on my own. At that age, I left my home in Wasilla, Alaska, leaving behind my entire family and what seemed like my future. Without much thought, I joined a Bible school. It was supposed to be a 2-month experience, but it turned into 4 transformative years with the organization. I moved from Portland, Oregon to California, and then to Philadelphia. Along the way, I balanced ministry work with a flooring job to pay the bills. Those years taught me a lot about God, faith, and the reality of Christian life. During this time, I met my wife. We got married, and at 20, I left the organization. But my departure wasn't filled with joy. It was marked by disappointment, discouragement, and a shaken faith. I was disillusioned by how pastors in the church treated us. So my wife and I moved 6 hours away to Rochester, New York, leaving behind the life we'd known. I arrived in Rochester confused, lost, and hopeless, with no job and no clear direction. But one day, I decided to take a leap of faith. I began offering flooring services to people in the area. That decision changed everything. 9 years later, I'm blessed to run a successful business, employing a team and serving thousands of homes. I've built a life that many would call the American dream: new cars, a beautiful home, and financial stability. But in all my success, I felt empty. I attended church, but my heart wasn't in it. My life revolved around money, work, and distractions. I told myself I'd made it on my own. No help, no guidance, just me and my hard work. Yet, deep down, something was missing. This year, everything changed. On June 29th, 2024, I made plans to visit my family back in Alaska. It had been years since I'd seen them. My plan was simple: spend time with my brothers and parents, go fishing, and unwind with my closest employee, Max. It was a week well spent, capped off with watching fireworks on the 4th of July. Life felt good. But on the night of July 5th, my life took a turn I never expected. That night, I went to bed early, preparing for an early flight back to New York. What I didn't know was that I would fall asleep and never truly wake up again. Early the next morning, Max came into my room to wake me up for our flight, but I was unresponsive. He persisted, thinking I was just oversleeping, but something wasn't right. My body woke up, but I wasn't truly there. I followed him to the car, dazed and disconnected, with him carrying my bags. As we drove to the airport, my brother, who was behind the wheel, and Max realized something was seriously wrong. Instead of heading to the airport, they rushed me to the hospital. I lay in the hospital surrounded by chaos. Doctors rushed in and out, running every test imaginable: spinal taps, brain scans, blood work. Their initial diagnosis was meningitis, but that was only the beginning. Each test revealed more confusion than clarity. They didn't fully understand what was happening to me. By the 3rd day, my wife and father-in-law had flown in to be by my side. I was barely conscious, unaware of the storm my body was enduring. My kidneys had failed, functioning at just 6%. The high doses of antibiotics keeping me alive were also destroying me from within. It was a cruel balance. The very medicine saving my life was killing me at the same time. On the 4th day, my condition worsened. My heart rate began to drop dangerously low, and the doctor's updates to my family grew more grim. They admitted they didn't have answers. My body was fighting a losing battle. Encephalitis had set in, swelling in my brain that stripped me of the ability to function. My family was told the brutal truth. Cases like mine often didn't end well. If I survived, the odds were staggering against me. The damage to my brain meant I would either remain in a vegetative state or suffer severe, life-altering impairments. On top of that, my kidneys were failing so completely that dialysis for the rest of my life seemed inevitable. The thought of it all was unbearable, for my family, and, in the brief moments of clarity, for me. I had worked so hard to build my life, to provide for my family, to become something more than my circumstances. And now, it seemed like it was all slipping away, but something deep within me wasn't ready to give up. I was completely unconscious as my body battled for survival. I had no awareness of the chaos around me, no knowledge of the doctors scrambling to stabilize me, no memory of the countless scans and tests, and no sense of the anguish my wife and family were enduring. For my wife, it was a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. She watched helplessly as the man she married, the father of her children, lay motionless. My father-in-law stood by her side, strong on the outside but equally shattered on the inside. Each day brought a new wave of devastating news. My kidneys were barely functioning, and the doctors explained that the medications meant to save my life were simultaneously destroying it. By day 4, my heart rate plummeted, and the words the doctors used to describe my condition offered little hope. Critical, unlikely recovery, minimal brain activity. The swelling in my brain from encephalitis had erased my ability to function. To the medical team, I was a patient hanging by a thread. To my family, I was still their husband, father, son-in-law, son and brother, and they refused to give up on me, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. They prayed, they begged for answers, they leaned on each other and on God, even in the face of silence. My wife held my hand every day, whispering words I couldn't hear but that I believe reached me in some way. I was slipping further away, but the fight wasn't over, not yet. While my body lay unconscious in the hospital, something was happening that no one in the room could see or understand. I was completely awake, not in my physical body, but in a different realm. I had no awareness of being hospitalized. To me, it was as if I had simply woken up the next morning, ready to continue my day. When I opened my eyes, I was in an empty white room. The walls were barren and there was nothing but a single gate door like something out of a jail cell. I stood there, fully aware and alert. I understood somehow that I had died. But I didn't know how it had happened. Did I crash in a car? Did I pass away in my sleep? The questions raced through my mind, but I had no answers. Curious, I walked toward the gate door, and that's when I saw them. Dark, demonic figures moving around on the other side of the door. Their presence sent a wave of panic through me. The atmosphere outside the door was suffocating, heavy with evil. I heard a loud voice commanding the darkness, a voice filled with authority and malice. In that moment I panicked. I understood something terrifying. I was in the wrong place. I turned away from the door, desperate to escape. That's when I saw it, a window opening in the room. Without hesitation, I ran toward it and leapt through, thinking it was my way out. But instead of freedom, I found myself in a tunnel, a dark, endless passage with flashing lights like I was being propelled through time itself. When the tunnel ended, I arrived in a new place. This place was darker than anything I had ever imagined. The air was thick with the stench of terror, pain, and despair. I stood alone, overwhelmed by the understanding that this was hell, or at least a place near it. Fear consumed me, a fear unlike anything I had ever experienced. I screamed, I cried, I begged for it to stop. I bit myself, desperate to wake up, but nothing worked. There was no escape. Time didn't move the way it does on Earth. There were no days, no nights, just an unending, suffocating existence. As I threw myself around in a panic, trying to escape this reality, I realized the hopelessness of my situation. That's when I heard it, a voice from the darkness. It mocked me, laughed at me, and hurled abuse that cut deeper than anything physical. The torment was indescribable. I felt as though I had been there for years, trapped in agony with no end in sight. At one point I looked up and to my astonishment, the darkness above me opened like a window. Through it I saw the earth. People rushing to work, busy with their lives, consumed by their daily routines, oblivious to the spiritual reality around them. I screamed at the top of my lungs, "Please listen to me! This place is real! There is a hell! Don't come here!" But no one could hear me. I was invisible to them. My cries of warning fell into silence. In tears and desperation I curled up on the ground, broken and defeated. But then, through the darkness, I heard a voice unlike any other. It wasn't mocking or cruel, it was a voice of hope, calm, and peace. Suddenly I felt something shift. From the quiet came the sound of prayers, soft at first but growing louder and louder. The voices multiplied, thousands of them, their prayers surrounding me like a shield. With each prayer I felt hope returning to me. Peace began to wash over me, and for the first time, I sensed that I wasn't alone. In that moment, something gentle touched me. It wasn't harsh or forceful, it was filled with love and compassion. Whatever it was picked me up, cradling me in its presence, and began carrying me back to my body. When I woke up, I slowly opened my eyes and looked around the hospital room. My father and brother were there, watching over me. Confused, I asked, "Why am I here?" My father placed a hand on my shoulder and said gently, "You're ill, son. Stay down and rest." But I couldn't stay down. I fell to my knees, tears streaming down my face despite the 2 IV lines still connected to my arms. In that moment of desperation, I begged my father for the pocket Bible he always carried with him. Without hesitation, he handed it to me. As soon as I gripped it, I held it tightly against my chest, feeling an overwhelming power radiating from its pages. Every word seemed alive, and I couldn't believe I had another chance to hold this sacred book. I kissed it, and with tears streaming down my face, I promised myself, I will find out what this book is truly about. I cried out repeatedly, I am not going back there, I am not going back there. Falling to my knees again, I asked Jesus for forgiveness with every fiber of my being. At that moment, I felt the love of God wash over me like a flood. It was so overwhelming, so complete, that every worry about my physical condition vanished. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I was at peace. When my wife and the rest of my family entered the room, they were stunned. They saw me sitting upright, conscious and aware of who I was. To confirm my recovery, they handed me a piece of paper and asked me to write my name. I did. They asked me questions that only I would know the answers to, and each response was correct. Overcome with joy, they praised God for what they could only describe as a miracle. The doctor, upon hearing the news, rushed into the room. He stopped in the doorway, staring at me in disbelief. After a long pause, he finally spoke. In my 30 years of practice, I have never seen anything like this. He explained how he'd spent sleepless nights trying to understand what was happening to me, especially given my young family and my deteriorating condition. He had been bracing himself to deliver the worst news to my loved ones, but my response to him was simple. My God healed me. Release me. I want to go home. The doctor hesitated. Because of the high risk due to your kidney failure, we can't let you go just yet, he said. But I insisted on another test. When the results came back, my kidney function had risen from 6% to 22%, an unexplainable improvement. With no medical reason to keep me, they released me that same day. 3 days later, I flew back home to Rochester. The following week, I underwent more tests. This time, my kidney function came back at 78%. A month after that, another test showed 103% functionality, more than fully healed. This was no ordinary recovery. It was an act of God. The same kidneys that were supposed to require lifelong dialysis were now functioning better than ever. This experience changed my life forever, but the months that followed weren't easy. I lived with a lingering sense of uncertainty, constantly questioning, why did this happen? What was the reason? Will it happen again? Every night, fear consumed me. I would lie in bed, drenched in sweat, wondering, am I going to wake up tomorrow? Nightmares haunted me, replaying the terror of my experience. This went on for weeks, draining me mentally and physically. One night, exhausted and desperate, I prayed, God, please give me peace. Please let me rest. I don't want to live in fear of this situation anymore. I want to trust you. That same night, around 3 a.m., I had a dream unlike any other. In it, I saw my family and me being raptured to heaven. It wasn't a frightening or overwhelming experience. It was beautiful and peaceful. I woke up feeling completely rested, with a joy and calmness I hadn't known in months. I knew in my heart that this was a vision from God, a reassurance that my life wasn't over. I had a long road ahead, and I would be with my family. That dream gave me the hope and strength I needed to face each day. But recovery wasn't just physical, it was mental and spiritual too. As I healed, I faced doubts from others, even from people I considered friends. They questioned me, wondering if I was all the way there mentally. To them, my newfound focus on serving God seemed obsessive or extreme. But my mind was clear. I needed to serve God, and I needed to do it the right way. That raised a new question for me. What is the correct way to serve God? Determined to find answers, I sought guidance. I spoke with pastors, mentors, and fellow Christians, trying to make sense of my experience and understand the path God wanted me to take. Their words offered me direction, but also reminded me that seeking God is a personal journey. This period of reflection and searching wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Slowly, I began to rebuild my life, not on the foundation of worldly success, but on faith, purpose, and trust in God. A few days later, one morning while I was sleeping, I was startled awake by the sound of a crow outside my window. Its cawing was relentless, and it wouldn't stop. Frustrated, I thought to myself, I'm trying to rest, and this bird is non-stop crowing. Then a thought crossed my mind. What if this is God trying to wake me up? Almost jokingly, I told myself, if this bird flies away, I'll get up and pray. The moment that thought entered my mind, the bird suddenly took off. I turned over and looked at the time. It was 5:59 a.m. Without hesitation, I got up, rushed to another room so I wouldn't wake my kids, and knelt in prayer. As I began to pray, the presence of God overwhelmed me. I felt His Spirit fill me, my mind, my body, my soul. My words became tongues, and I was consumed by His power. At that moment, I knew the Lord was waking me up to spend time with Him, to seek His face, and to show me the correct way to serve Him. Later that day, I told my wife about what had happened. She was excited, encouraging me and reminding me to stay strong in my faith. The next night, I went to bed not thinking much about the previous morning, but as the night passed, I was awakened again by the same crow at my window. I immediately turned over to check the time. It was exactly 5:59 a.m. again. I shook my wife awake and said, "The crow is crowing again." Half asleep, she smiled and said, "Go and pray." I rushed back to the other room, and just like the day before, I spent hours in prayer, worship, and reading the Bible. On the third night, I went to bed with full expectation that the bird would wake me up again. But this time, I woke up on my own at 5:57 a.m., needing to go to the bathroom. As I finished, I realized I had woken up too early, and frustration crept in. I wanted to hear the bird again, I thought. I walked to the window, pulled back the curtains, and looked outside. I stood there, staring into the early morning stillness, waiting. At 6:02 a.m., I saw the bird fly by, cawing as it passed my window. I didn't need any more proof. At that moment I fully understood. My God listens. He was calling me to spend time with Him, to seek Him first before the day begins. This realization brought me peace and clarity. I knew that God was guiding me, teaching me to prioritize Him in every moment. From that day forward, I made it my mission to meet Him every morning in prayer and worship, trusting that He would show me the way. As I write this now, it has been 5 months since God restored me. Every day, I see His hand in my life. Whether it's in the people I meet, the opportunities that come my way, or the quiet moments of reflection, His presence is undeniable. My daily mission is simple yet profound, to bring glory to God, whether through my work, a conversation at a restaurant, or wherever life takes me. I no longer question whether I will wake up when I go to bed. That fear is gone. I rest peacefully, knowing my God is alive, that He hears me, and that His work in my life is not finished. Sometimes I reflect on my journey and think about all I've achieved, the progress I've made, the success I've built. There were moments when I believed it was all me, my hard work, my determination. But looking back now, I see the truth. When I left my faith and became discouraged, God had a different plan for me. Through this experience, He revealed Himself in a way I could not deny. He showed me that hell is real, that life doesn't end here, and that His love and grace are greater than I could have imagined. He healed me completely, restoring my body, renewing my mind, and giving me a peace that can only be described as miraculous. But the greatest miracle of all isn't just my healing. It's that Jesus Christ rose on the third day, offering salvation and the forgiveness of sins to anyone who believes. Through faith, and by seeking the truth in the Word of God, we can find the answers we're searching for. I'm still on my journey, and I know there is so much ahead. There are countless questions I don't have answers to, but I've come to understand something important. There is only one who holds those answers, Lord Jesus Christ. With every step forward, I trust in Him. I trust that He will guide me, reveal His plans in His perfect timing, and use my life for His glory. My story isn't over, it's only just beginning.